Welcome to today's episode of Expert Showcase. Today on the show, we have another epic guest for you. His name is Denis Roberts, and he's going to be talking to you about traditional sales marketing and how it fails the coaching industry. 3 things you need to learn to directly enroll clients abundantly. Hey Dennis, how you doing today?
Fine, Chris. How about you?
Epic as always, man. It is such an honor and privilege to have you on the show today, Dennis. Folks, I've gotten a chance to get to know Dennis over the last, must be a couple of months now. And, talking about somebody who lives in abundance, really has his finger on the pulse of how to get and enroll clients. That's the man you're looking at, Denis Roberts. Dennis with one N. And I must admit, it's, the over and under on me screwing up the lower thirds today is only going to be 1, folks. So, you can take the over, you can take the under. If I didn't screw them up at all on it, if I didn't put 2 N's in, then it's a 0, and then you who took the under win. And if it's, if I did screw up, maybe you get a push or you get the over. See, Dennis, we like to have a lot of fun with our guests and our audience. Our audience knows how many mistakes I can make, and at least you have an easy name to pronounce, so we can't do that, but we usually like to run a little over-under, so to speak. It is kind of, anyway, I digress way too much. Maybe we'll bring you back on and we'll do an overrun on how many coaching clients people enroll by watching your episode. But anyway, enough about all of that. Dennis is joining us today from the UK. Another country heard from. I think I got to get a map and back. Put little pins where we've got guests from. And as always, we're going to start off with Dennis's hero's journey. For those of you new to the show, the short version is we're going to hear how Dennis was a success at one point in his life in something. Something happened, that seminal moment, that turning point, and then it led him to be the success he is today. And you're going to want to sit down, take notes, and listen up, because he's got a lot of great information. We're going to dig deep into it. And we're going to have a lot of fun talking about it. So Dennis, so I can shut up and take my 1 breath an hour, why don't you go ahead and give our audience a brief overview of your hero's journey?
Hi, Chris. I guess where my hero's journey started was when I came close to the business collapsing. Having years and years of a relatively successful business, suddenly I found myself in a point which is, well, really, really scary without putting too fine a word on it. What preceded this is that I wanted to launch a new program and decided to hire a top marketer to do that. So having closed the previous program, I'd set up 3 months for the setup and launch of the new website, in which to take a space, work on that, and not enroll any further clients. The setup phase, which was for 3 months, took 6 months at double the cost. The launch phase ran for 2 months without generating a single interview. So if you like, that was really, really what it was like, being up against the wall, thinking, gosh, I'm pretty long in the tooth, and where does this leave me? So I think, rock bottom, I think, describes it quite well, and it's a really useful place to be, because that's when you start to see genuine opportunities. So where things started to turn around for me is that during all this time, I was getting heavily involved in creativity and abundance coaching, which was very, very powerful in shifting from a negative to a positive mindset. And, there were 3 bits to that. One is engaging with the people and the community. Another was enrolling my own creativity and abundance coach. And finally, this paradigm, or if you like, new model, which has come out of it and has been really, really exciting, was all part of the turnaround.
Yeah, and then of course you got to you're in the aftermath, and you're now a success, and teaching other people how you created that same success for yourself. So that's great, and I love the way it's interesting as I look around. I love the way you started off and you were successful, and you said, okay, I've been successful at this. At least it sounded to me anyway, that you were successful. You said, I've been successful at this. I want to do something else. And, it sounded like you did your research and your planning, and it took a lot longer and was a lot more difficult to get to that something else, which is, I think, something we can all identify with. Things always take twice the amount of time and twice the amount of money if you're lucky. Um, for people who've been on at rock bottom, you wouldn't call it luck, but just kind of it's always, we always underestimate for some reason. So anyway, let's dig deeper. Let's go back to the beginning and let's talk about that pre-turnaround phase. So give the folks a little bit of an idea where you were, what you were doing, and let's just kind of talk a little bit about what you were going through in the beginning phase before you just made that decision to switch gears.
Sure. I think that one of the fundamental issues was what was different about the new program is that I wanted to, we work one-on-one, but I wanted to integrate a marketing element. So I teamed up with this top marketer, so there was quite a strong relationship there. And as the marketing wasn't working for me, it was clear there was going to be no basis for them to deliver it to our clients. So it was really, really at a fundamental level that I needed to get to grips with why is there such a bad fit between marketing and coaching. So that was an important part of the journey.
So you said there wasn't a good fit between marketing and coaching in the beginning phases. When you were successful, did you have or did you see a good fit at that point between marketing and coaching? Now this is before you went in this new direction. So when you were successful before, the first time, before the turnaround, did you see a good fit between marketing and coaching at that point?
Well, I think I was responding to the issue that some coaches have problems in enrollment. And so to beef up the program, I wanted to bring in that particular marketing expertise as part of the program. The problem is the more that I got into it and the more that I discovered it wasn't working for me, the more I realized that the program was flawed. So the program was based on an idea. That idea was initially tested on me and with disastrous consequences. So like everything went out of the window.
Yeah, that's never, it's never good. They always say it's, people don't like to be first to a party, and people never like to be guinea pigs. I mean, part of my background is in IT, and I know there is something to be said for being an alpha tester or a beta tester, but they'll even tell you, if you install a brand new piece of software, don't do it on, on your PC, if it's in beta, because it could make everything, go down the tubes real quick. Kind of like when Windows 10 just came out, the manufacturer of my laptop said, you know what, you might not want to install it because you're going to blue screen to death. And I went, well, that's a good reason not to install something brand new to make to make one of the things I use for the control room go away. So it's interesting. What I heard there was you were talking about the program, and it sounds to me. And let me ask you a question. In the beginning phase, can you give us a quick background on what you were successful doing there in the beginning phase?
What I was really successful with was a number of areas of development for the coach. My company specializes in working with coaches only, and it takes an integrated approach to personal development, and so that they're all independents, they all own their businesses. So it takes an integrated approach to personal development, to leadership development, to organizational development, and to continuing professional development. So all those elements are in there. And somewhere within that mix, the bit which probably was most challenging and outside of my core expertise was the lead generation part. So that's why I wanted to bring that in. But the major lesson that came out of this for me, I mean, I'm sure that you probably do things through sort of lean startup and you pivot and you really test the market properly. My biggest mistake was to have an idea, to think that idea would work, and without testing it first. And in a sense, part of the process was testing the idea and the discovery that the idea wasn't a good one. And what that highlighted was where all the disconnects were.
Yeah, there's something to be said for fail fast, and there's something to be said for getting a minimum viable product or a minimum viable service out there to market. And there's something else to be said for doing maybe a little bit more research. It's like you have to get, if you, as a coach, if you want to do a new program, you have to do some test marketing. You just have to. You have to see if it's going to work. You have to see if anybody resonates. But I coach people all the time, and I tell them, I've had a lot of people come to me and say, Chris, can we just go out and create our full program? And it's like, no, don't create your program yet. And they're like, wait a minute, we want to sell it. It's like, okay, do you know if anybody is going to buy it? And they're like, no. And I'm like, then why would you spend the hours, the countless hours creating a full program if you have no clue if it's going to serve any niche, or if it's going to serve anybody's needs, wants, desires, and if they're going to pay you for it. And we can talk about that later, but I want to get back to the beginning for a second, because what I think I heard was something very interesting. You were successful in the coaching business and in the coaching industry. You realized there was a deficiency, a shortcoming. And the funniest thing, Dennis, is I think you said deficiency. If not, that's what I heard. And the reason I picked up on that, and I love that, is because too many times people in our industry are afraid to talk about pitfalls, and are afraid to talk about deficiencies, and are afraid to talk about failures. And I believe if we just change our opinion of those words, it's going to make for a much better, much open, much happier person, because you realize that you aren't deficient, the process was deficient, or there were some deficiencies in the company. You weren't a failure, a process failed. So anyway, it sounded like you said you found a deficiency, and that was in marketing, and you went out and sought the expertise of somebody to bring in. Did I hear that correctly?
You did hear it correctly, but two problems. On my side, the bit which I've talked about, which is having an idea and wanting to just put that into practice without properly testing the idea. And then the other was discovering the degree to which there was a mismatch in the idea in the first place.
Interesting. So let me ask you this. You said a mismatch in the idea. So you're saying that you had an idea, you thought something would work, and I should say, where was that mismatch? And what do you mean by mismatch?
The mismatch is between traditional marketing and sales and the way in which coaches market and enroll clients. So the fundamental mismatch was that any front-end marketing and enrollment needs to take place through coaching practice. It's the only thing which is aligned with coaching practice, which traditional sales and marketing isn't. So the key learning that came out of this was how to teach marketing and enrollment that was coaching based, furthermore that was based on abundance coaching. So it shifted from a negative and sort of scarcity model into a creativity and abundance one.
Yeah, and creativity and abundance is such a great place to be. It's a scary place to be sometimes for some people. Yeah, I know it sounds weird. You would think scarcity would be scarier, but that's a topic for a whole nother conversation, because this is really good right now, because we're leading into the turning point. And when it comes to the turning point, it sounds like it wasn't one seminal moment. It sounds like it was just things that happened along the way that led you down to a point where you realized something had to change. If you can remember back, can you remember what the first inkling you had was that maybe this wasn't a good match, and maybe there was something off, or something different, or something, I don't want to say wrong, because it really wasn't wrong, but something off, and there was a mismatch?
Okay, the other thing that I should add into the picture is that the person that I hired had formerly been one of my coaching clients. So there was that dimension to the relationship as well, which did have its downside, because I probably, when there was slippage on time and what have you, I wasn't as hard on it. What I should say in their favour is that I'm a perfectionist, and so part of the reason that the setup and of the website and that phase took so long is the degree to which it didn't feel right and we were trying to get there. What I've learned with hindsight is that we'd never get there because the fundamental differences are so major, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes perfect sense, and I'm laughing, folks. Through setting up the show, I can vouch for Dennis. He's a perfectionist, and that's a good thing. And the reason I say it's a good thing is because when you work with him and his company, it means they're going to take the time to make sure everything is right. Perfectionism gets a bad rep sometimes for people who know they're perfectionists and can identify it and understand it. It can be such a powerful force. It's the people who don't want to admit they're perfectionists that you've got to watch out for. Anyway, I get off my soapbox. I digress. So, part of what you started to find out, or part of what you figured out in this turnaround period and in the aftermath, and we'll talk about the aftermath in a couple of minutes, but part of what you figured out about this turnaround period was that you took responsibility. Can I ask you a very personal question about that? When you took responsibility, that it was that part of it was lied on your shoulders for being a perfectionist. May I ask you a personal question on that?
Absolutely.
How did it feel when you took that responsibility? Did it feel good? Did it feel bad? Did it feel freeing? Do you remember how it felt when you took that responsibility?
Yeah, I mean, that responsibility occurred when I encountered the work of Wallace D. Wattles. So it wasn't just something that involved me, it's something that involved a very powerful connection. And actually, it was the powerful connection that was energizing, that, underpinned taking the responsibility, which in turn felt really, really good. Because obviously, as things were sliding downhill, my biggest fear was that I wasn't going to be able to turn the situation around.
Yeah,
and slipping further and further into negativity on the one hand, on the other hand, getting more and more deeply immersed in abundance.
Yeah. Now, here's another question for you. Do you think you'd have ever been able to turn it around if you didn't take responsibility for at least the piece of the issue and the challenge that was yours?
The answer to that is no. And what I'm trying to do in this interview is saying that, okay, although there was a mismatch, I'm also trying to take responsibility for the elements of that mismatch that were down to me.
Well, and I bring that up because for those of you watching at home or listening, maybe you've record this and listen to your car or something. What Dennis said right there is worth gold, because until you take responsibility for the pieces of a situation that are yours, not for the whole thing. You don't have to. You're not a martyr. You're not putting you're not Atlas with the world, and you're not the martyr with the oh geez, I need to go work out, man. It's not good, Dennis, to do this if you got no muscle. So that my pool of eligible women just shrunk because I'm single. But that's besides the point. Who knows? Maybe by the time this airs, I won't be. But anyway, that's besides the point. The point is that you don't have to take responsibility for everything. Just take responsibility for what you're responsible for. And it's such a freeing experience and such a freeing thing. So you mentioned Wallace D. Wattles and epic. I mean, it's kind of a epic author, and I almost can't even talk. I got to get back to a question here. So during this turnaround period, you started to take responsibility and you started to realize that things might be mismatched. But one of the other things I heard you say was you used a previous client as now a partner or a resource. Do you think you had any blinders on because they were a previous client and maybe looked past some of the warning signs that this was out of sync?
Yes, it was a more difficult relationship. It was a more complex relationship. The roles had switched. Obviously, I had mixed feelings about being too demanding it would have been a much cleaner relationship if I'd chosen someone completely different. It still wouldn't have changed all the fundamental mismatches between sales and marketing, but at a personal level, obviously that was the key part of the situation. And, it was messy and it did impact on our relationship. And obviously part of the real challenge was to resolve the situation and come out of it in a way that to at least to some extent preserve the relationship, but unfortunately there has been some cost to the relationship.
Yeah, and the interesting part, and the reason I ask that question, and the reason I bring that up is because a lot of times when we use people close to us, or we use ex-clients as providers, we need to be overly cautious and overly careful of not letting things completely go that are going to damage what we're trying to do. And we tend to do that because they're friends of ours, because we don't want to hurt them. We don't want to see them feel bad, especially living in an abundance mindset and living in a positive mindset. You want to give everybody the benefit of the doubt, right, Dennis?
Sure, and I think that it's, how can I put it, it's not, take it out of any kind of blame frame. Nobody was at blame. It was nobody's fault. It was just a learning journey. What then becomes the issue is how you manage yourself in that learning journey, how you manage your responsibilities. And part of managing responsibilities as well is letting go of control, which I think is really key. So it's a delicate balance between being responsible and not trying to control the situation.
Yeah, epic. Once again, another piece of gold right there. Accepting responsibility, but not feeling like you have to be in complete control. And this really leads us into the next part, which is the aftermath. So when it comes to the aftermath, you started to realize there was this mismatch, and unfortunately, the person, and I'll say unfortunately because it created another layer. You had an ex-client, so so there was a bigger challenge. Um, when you Once you hit that rock bottom and you started on the upslope, do you remember what either the first or one of your early actions did after you hit rock bottom to start coming back on the upswing?
Yeah, I mean, my first is to, obviously I stopped the marketing budget, reached a point where it was pointless pouring money down the drain. The cost of that was that I lost my website as well, because it was on a platform that couldn't be shifted to my own hosting company. So the complete investment was, I cut my entire losses, but I still had a budget, and I used that budget to hire an abundance coach. And that was a key turning point, because I think it's so important, not just with abundance, but with coaching in general, to have that relationship in place. Because the other aspect that one experiences when things go down the tube is the degree of isolation, fear, cut-offness. All of those things really amplify. So it's very, very important time to have a coach.
Yeah, wow, another golden nugget, folks. I mean, Dennis is just giving you epic value today, and I don't mean just in a bad way, but he's bringing it today. Dennis is bringing it. And it's like kind of the rock, just bring it. But it's epic, Dennis. And the interesting thing about what you just said is it's so counterintuitive. People would say, I have a marketing budget. I no longer have a website. I need to spend the rest of my money on getting a website back up, because if I don't have a website, nobody's going to find me. You took exactly the opposite approach and said, look, there's something else going on here that I need to change, and all the pretty websites in the world aren't going to help, which is kind of bad, because it's one of the companies I own does is websites. So, but I'm a coach too, so we'll figure all that out. But no, the whole point is that most people would go for the pretty website first. You took the other route and went for the coaching. I congratulate you on it. Was there a thought process behind choosing the abundance coach versus doing more marketing and doing the website?
I think what's at the core of this is comparing the difference between a scarcity model on which traditional sales and marketing is built and an abundance model. So on the scarcity model, there's the whole competitive element, competing on price, et cetera, et cetera. But there's another part of it which is very, very undermining. And coaches are from Mars and marketers are from Pluto. And the impact of that is that many marketers, directly or indirectly, convince coaches that they don't have the words to convey their message, that the marketers do, so let the marketers speak for you. Now, what's absolutely critical about a coaching relationship is it's 100% authentic relationship between two individuals. Yeah. The only way of speaking is through your true voice. When you hire a marketer with fancy scripts, with enticements, with all these sorts of things, they're actually superimposing their voice on you. So that has a double effect. One, it means that you don't discover the empowerment of speaking through your own voice. But two, you lose self-confidence, you lose self-belief, you move increasingly into a negative mindset. And hey, guess what? The marketing doesn't work.
Yeah.
So it compounds the issue. So, it really is quite a fundamental one, that.
Yeah, amazing. And I'm laughing so hard because now at least you've explained one of the challenges I previously experienced when talking about, doing marketing and everything. Of course, I've got VideoContent.Agency, VideoContent.Marketing, got a lot of stuff. And we used to talk a lot about video content marketing, and we couldn't get at the beginning, we couldn't get the point through, and now I know why. When people heard marketing and marketer, and coaches especially, they thought what we were going to do is tell them what to say. And the way we built this company and what we do with all our clients is we give them an outline of how to put their thoughts on paper and then get it out. And we tell every client that they really have the voice inside of them. They know what their ideal client wants to hear the best, not us, so they should use that. Now, do we help tweak it a little bit? Sure. We help give, maybe a little bit more powerful language here and there, but we don't impose our will and we don't do anything. So, man, Dennis, I am epically psyched right now because, you just explained explain something that's been on my mind for a long time. So thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, so can I just respond with a bit of feedback?
Sure.
Where you're different from traditional marketing is you're communicating with the coach in their true voice and through your true voice in conversation. Mm-hmm. So the shift is from presentation to conversation, and that is absolutely critical. It's what you stand for, and it's what sets you apart.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Geez, folks, I should just wrap up the interview now. Dennis is giving you some great nuggets. He just gave me an epic compliment. I'm not sure where we go from here, but we still have another half hour. Plus, we've got to get into the expert focus. So let's slowly but surely kind of wind this all together and spend a little bit more time on the aftermath before we get there. I know you talked in the aftermath. I mean, you're a success now, and we're going to hear all about that success when we get to the expert focus segment and about how you can show people the 3 things they need to directly enroll clients abundantly. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. But one of the other questions, I know there was some challenges. Is there any other challenge during the aftermath that sticks in your mind that you had to overcome to become the success that you are today?
I think the biggest challenge is handling negativity. We all slip into negative mindsets, and it's really crucial that we have ways of making that shift. I'm the kind of person who spent their life in a doubt culture, so all my education has actually been directed towards becoming a skeptic. So actually, it's quite a major shift for me to shift from negative, critical mindset into a positive and abundant one. So at an immediately personal level, that involved me with certain meditation practices, getting into various spiritual fields, in addition to my business coach. I also have a spiritual guide who has developed very advanced meditation techniques, so who's introducing me more and more into that space. Since then, we've also formed a group called Group Blogging for Abundance with Friends. So there are 3 of us who are in that space. And again, blogs are conversational. So that's been very exciting, and they're very highly tuned people. So the community element is really, really important because of the isolation element. And in isolation, we're more likely to move into a negative space. Being out there and being in a community with fellow positive people is a very important part.
Yeah, it definitely is. I know that, I know I went through my own challenges, and I remember that isolation. I remember days when I would just pick up my foot off the couch, put it on the floor, and that would be the only cheer I would have, and I wouldn't talk to another human being for days or weeks at a time. This happened to be when I went through my divorce and everything else, so I can personally vouch for the fact of how nasty and terrible isolation is. If you're watching this episode right now, obviously in this moment you're not in isolation, but I invite you to think about your life as a whole and see if you spend any time in isolation that's unwanted. And what I mean by, sometimes we do just want to get away from people and we want to be by ourselves. But if you find yourself in that scenario when it's unwanted, even if there's no other reason to contact Dennis, which we'll give you away later, reach out and talk to Dennis, because he obviously knows a lot about how to come out of isolation. At least start to have a conversation with him around that, and start to get connected to this guy. So we're going to wrap up the hero's journey piece of today's show. You've heard how Dennis had a successful coaching business, decided that something else, something more was needed. It almost turned into a big tragedy, at least from a business standpoint. And what's come out of it is another beautifully successful, abundant business on the other side. We're going to take about a 60-second break. Stick around, and we'll be right back. And for those Toastmasters, you can stop counting my ums and ahs, because this is kind of live. At least it's recorded before a studio audience, and I like to say We'll be right back. Are you a coach, an author, or a speaker who wants your very own web TV show just like Expert Showcase, only with all your branding around it? Then what you want to do is head on over to VideoContent.Agency, go up to the Work With Us tab, send us your information, let's start a conversation, let's see if we can develop a program around you and your message. And until we see you there, make it an epic day. Welcome back to Expert Showcase. Today on the show we have Denis Roberts, and he's talking to us and telling us today about the 3 things we need to directly enroll clients abundantly. And we just got done with Denis's Hero's Journey. If you have not watched it, if you're just tuning in, first of all, where were you? We missed you. We missed your beautiful face. And go back and watch Denis's Hero's Journey. It was an epic tale of how he was successful, wanted to make the business more, wanted to fix what he perceived as something missing, and it is missing. And it just didn't go so well, just to say the least. And he's now an epic success. So without any further ado or me babbling, I'll take my one breath an hour and say, Denis, in this segment, we're going to talk about 3 things you need to directly enroll clients abundantly. Can you give us a quick overview about what we're going to be talking about?
Sure. Number 1 is that sales and marketing traditionally is an off-the-peg service. One size fits all. People may actually tailor that to adapt it, but the problems are they're built on frameworks and platforms that are all designed to make a sale. So even if you play around with putting parts of it in your own words, the fundamental structure is still there, and it doesn't solve the problem of people feeling they're being sold to. So that's number 1. Number 2, the primary objective of traditional marketing and sales is to make that sale. So that's put first and foremost ahead of anything that the client's looking for or service to the client. So the change that's needed is to put the client first And when you put the client first, enrollment follows quite naturally if the match is the right one.
Right.
And the third bit was to develop this, what I've called as the paradigm, which is the new model, which moves from scarcity to abundance.
Epic. So this is, as you can all tell by Dennis's quick overview, this is going to be an epic piece of expert showcase for expert focus. The three exact things we're going to talk about is how to identify your precise niche, putting the clients first, and learning to apply this new paradigm. So Dennis, let's dive right in. When you say identify your precise niche, give us a little more. Tell us what you're talking about here.
Okay, each of us have a true gift. It's really, really important to get a handle on what that is. We get our true gift from what we love doing most. But where a coach comes in is that for many of us, we actually need to have a conversation to identify what that gift is. We may not recognize it for ourselves. When you have identified your true gift, the next thing you need to identify is where that gift has most impact on a client's key challenge. So you're identifying the key challenge on which you can have life-changing impact. Anything less than that, and you're not giving the very best possible service. So when you put the two together, they actually identify with laser-sharp precision what your niche is. One side of that niche is the challenge. The other side of that niche is the unique gift you bring to bear to address that challenge and facilitate the necessary change.
I love it. So we have a new over/under counter. So it's the word niche, and so since us Americans don't say it right, the count is now at 3. So the over/under will be set at 6. You know, if I say niche more than 6 times, you win the over. Less than 6 times, you get the under. So you all can bet at home, whatever you want. Doesn't matter to me. This is not a gambling website. There ends my public service announcement. Anyway, if you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. Sorry, got to give the public service announcement. But it's so epic what you're saying there about niche, and the fact that most people will go out and tell you how to define a niche, and they will tell you to define your avatar first. And while that works well for some people, for folks like you and I, Dennis, it doesn't work well, because we know what our gifts are, we know where people's pain points are, and if we're trying to start with an avatar first, it feels counterintuitive, right? Meaning if we try and start with an avatar of an age and a demographic and everything else, if we start with that, it feels counterintuitive, because we'd rather focus on our gifts and where the pain points are out there in the world. I mean, is that making sense? Am I picking up right here?
I think it's the way in which you relate that's important. So what you're looking for is the most powerful way you can relate to a particular challenge.
Okay.
So on the challenge side of it, what makes it unique is actually the extent to which you have coped with that in your own life, you have direct experience of it, and you can empathize, connect instantly with the other human being. So it's a kind of weird setup from a marketing point of view, because it's a combination between mass marketing and mass one-to-one marketing. Mm-hmm. So the generic bit is the number one challenge. The one-to-one bit is how the person connects with you on a one-to-one basis, in terms of knowing that you've been there and that you can guide.
Yeah, and you can provide a steadying hand, and provide a steadying hand, and like you said, be a guide. So when it comes to, so I think what I heard you saying, I just want to kind of recap for a second, because I'm still getting my brain wrapped around it, because I love the concept. So identify your gifts, and identify, is it fair to say you identify problems you see in the world, and then you marry those two up. Is that, am I getting that right?
You're getting it. I mean, there's two sides to the relationship.
Okay.
There's you and the client or prospective client. What you have to offer the prospective client is the biggest number one challenge, if you like, that on your end you've tackled through your hero's journey, and at their end is what they're likely to be suffering most. But because you've made the journey, you can, if you like, assist. So it's putting both sides of the coaching relationship together in that particular way.
So, is it fair to say that if one goes out and they start putting their gifts down, they start listing their gifts, and their gifts are based on their biggest challenge, you know, or where their gifts align with their biggest challenge, so they'll be able to resonate well, that they may look at some things they have on their list and they might realize that they were one of only a couple of people that went through that, and that it's not a viable thing to start their coaching business on? I mean, is that a fair thing to say or not?
I think that when you take the mass marketing and the one-to-one element, is that it's operating at such a deep level that the person can instantly engage if you're the right person and if it's relevant. So it's really, really making a deep connection.
Yeah.
And that deep connection. So for instance, my gift is to facilitate tough and complex decisions and resolve dilemmas. So at one level, that's very, very precise. But another level, it's in terms of the challenges that people are facing. So if people are facing a tough decision or a complex decision, then they would be a good match. And the gifts that I bring to bear would be to connect them with their true gift, their true voice, and how that can move them forward in relation to that particular challenge. And that's the conversation that takes place through your marketing and how you actually present yourself to the world.
Okay, epic. You know, as we kind of wrap up niching a little bit, which I think I might get through it with only saying niching. So you who bet the under might actually win this, unless of course I say niche. Oh, there, had to give one more later on. But back to the important thing, which is you and your concepts here. The one thing that still strikes me about niching is the fact of that if you find you have gifts and you find you can do things that are applicable to such a small amount of people. Like we used to joke around about left-handed dentists in Podunk, Idaho. You know, if that is your gift, if your gift aligns with that, then you might not be able to make a business out of it. And I guess that's part of where I'm just trying to get. A final quick question. When people are niching, does that, when you identify your precise niche, does that come into play at all in the identification phase for you to understand how large of a market you may or may not be able to serve?
Yeah. What defines the largeness of the market is the core challenge. What defines the niche is the one-to-one element that a person will pick up on in terms of working with you. So
Okay.
in terms of ideal customers, you've moved beyond an ideal customer. You've moved to the point of a unique relationship with someone. So that's the way in which you structure your value proposition, and that's how you go out into the world. And you'll find that there are plenty of people who can identify with the core challenge. But in terms of finding you as someone who is the right person for them, that becomes self-selecting.
Yep, I get it now. So it's at a higher level. So by the time you get to niching, you've already identified the core problem, and during that phase, of course, you have to figure out if you have a problem that's big enough to sustain your particular lifestyle or your particular business wherever you want to take it. I mean, some people might just want to have a small business, so they might need a couple of clients. Others might want to have a large multinational company, And so anyway, I've got it. I will babble on forever. This is such an epically interesting topic, but we've got to get to putting the client first. That sounds very simple. Put the client first. Tell us a little bit more about this.
Okay. Well, we're in contrast, we're familiar with traditional sales and marketing, which is all about manipulating a sale, which is, getting to impulse buying, getting to enticement, all the various things which put the sale before the person. Putting the person first is actually the conversation which discovers whether there's sufficient of a match between the impact of your true gift on their number one challenge for it to be a viable relationship. And that also involves taking as much time as it takes to get to that point. And the relationship starts out as a coaching relationship from day one. So you've shifted from the sales and marketing model to the coaching one, and so that relationship's consistent with the coaching practice, whereas sales and marketing isn't.
So it would sound to me that it makes it much easier for somebody to flow from a prospect to a client if you've been coaching them the whole time, right?
Yes, I mean, it makes the transition into a sale seamless, because they've got to know you as a coach, you've moved them forward as a coach, the human relationships there. And unlike sales, unlike traditional sales, the only important outcome is that the match is strong enough. And if it's not, you're not attached to any outcomes and you let it go, in the knowledge that the client will find someone with a closer match, and you're leaving space in your practice for someone where there'll be a stronger match. So that's where abundance comes in, and it all evens out.
Yeah, definitely. Now, have you ever had a client who's gone through having that aha moment where they started off trying to sell everybody, just telling them about their services, and they flipped over to just basically talking to people and getting to know them first and really being energized about the client and their business and everything? And if so, what were the results?
Well, it's quite interesting. I mean, I have a current client who, on the one hand, is a super salesman, and on the other hand, sees the value of moving into the new way of doing things. So if you like, he's in transition. And we were having a conversation earlier today, which was around basically allow that transition to occur naturally. You're in transition, and you don't need to make any radical changes. Just treat it as part of the flow, and don't beat yourself up in terms of the old framework.
Well, as they say, force negates, right, Dennis? Force negates, and a lot of times when we're pushing, what that means is a lot of times when we're pushing in a certain direction, trying to force something to happen, we get a lot of pushback from whether it's the universe, God, whatever higher power, or whatever you believe that's greater than yourself will give you that pushback, because you're not in the flow and not going with the flow, right?
And at the same time, recognizing that transitions are involved. So it's not 1 minute you're one thing and 1 minute you're the next, but that you're actually on a journey. And the important thing is to make sort of baby steps in a direction which serves.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's not. I mean, look at 100. You look at somebody who runs a 100-yard dash. I mean, when they cross the finish line, they don't just stop abruptly because they're moving very, very quickly. Especially if like you're Usain Bolt, you're going very, very quickly, and you can't just stop, or you would hurt yourself. So I don't understand. I think. Well, let me ask you this: do you find a lot of people don't understand why they can't just switch like that?
I think where the issues occur is at the level of expectation. So if to some extent you can be less tight on questions of expectation, because the whole thing that's being balanced is two different worlds, one in which you're letting things be, letting things go, and the other in which you're trying to do things, control things. And actually the issue is how you balance these. So I think a good example of this is how you relate to goals. Goals actually involve two dimensions. They involve the being dimension with the vision, and they involve the doing dimension with the mission. When there's a conflict is when the doing is foreground and the being is background. When you make that sort of shuttle, then actually the vision becomes much more powerful. The abundance opens. You're suddenly spotting these opportunities all around you that keep you on track. You've still got the framework of the journey, but the important shift is it opens up the learning aspect of the journey. At a doing level, we focus far, far too much on results. And so whatever results we get, we may not actually get much learning out of that. Whereas if you're focusing on the vision and the abundance, you're in a very, very rich learning situation.
Epic.
So it's the journey that's important, most important, not the destination.
Epic. It's the journey that's most important, not the destination. Once again, another golden nugget. Before we wrap up the whole the section on putting the client first, I have two questions. One centered around what you were just talking about being versus doing. I shouldn't say is there any. What is the first step you would tell anybody? We won't go through the whole process. We don't have our command the time today to go through the whole process. But what would the first step you would be to recommend people who are in the doing state flip over and start to move towards the being state?
It would probably be to introduce them to being activities. So it may be introducing to forms of meditation, actually introducing them to another world. And quite a lot of the people that I have as clients are high-level coaches who've been very highly educated, which means they've got a lot of unlearning to do. Yeah. And so it can be, it can be quite challenging. So I think it's finding ways of introducing balance, introducing equilibrium, growing the being area alongside the doing, and moving into more and more a state of balance. Okay. Because what the being does is it puts the person in touch with their experience, it puts the person in touch with their feelings, it puts the person in touch with their soul, and it puts the person in touch with their energy.
And that's an epic place to be. And the final, that really is, and I could say so much more about it. I'm just cutting myself off because we could have a whole nother show all around this. But I want to wrap up putting the client first because I'm sure our audience would love to know when it comes to putting the client first. While this sounds like it all makes common sense, if somebody looks at themselves after our discussion realizes they might not be putting the client first, what's one initial step you can give them that they could take away and do today to start moving in the direction of putting the client first?
I think probably the most important thing is letting go of any particular outcomes, so that when you're meeting with someone, you don't have your sights set on a sale. You have your sights set on where can I be of greatest service. That's the question. That's the key question. And if you stick to that as your key question, the rest will take care of itself.
Wow, couldn't have said any better myself. That is epic, and that leads us into applying the new paradigm. Now, when you talk about applying the new paradigm, let's give the folks a quick overview of what the new paradigm is and what it's all about, and then let's dig a little bit deeper.
Okay, I'd like to respond to this firstly in terms of principles, then in terms of practice.
Okay.
So for principles, the easiest way for me to describe this is as an analogy. In the UK, we have something called bespoke products and services, and that's similar to 100% individualized. So what provides a very, very good example is the manufacturer of handmade shoes. So this has two elements to it. It has the service side and it has the production side. On the service side, the skill of the consultant rather than salesperson is to get to precisely what the person is looking for, so they can design exactly what it is that they're looking for. And then on the production side, what happens is, I don't know whether you're familiar with something called a shoe last. Does that mean anything to you?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, what a shoe last is it's a profile of each individual foot, which is made in wood. So each shoe is different for each foot. So it's down to that level of detail. Then the last is used to manufacture the shoe around, to handmade and hand stitch the shoe around it.
Okay.
So where this provides an analogy with coaching is that the only way to deliver coaching, in my opinion, is through 100% personalized one-on-one services, which brings it all together. So if we come to the service side of that, then that's all about actually finding out what it is, finding out what it is that the client's looking for. And on the production side, the equivalent of that is designing the program. So the service is getting to what's being looked for. The program is translating it into a program. So again, it's kind of being and doing to some extent.
Yeah, so it sounds like it's fully, I mean, to me, it sounds like it's a fully customizable, you offer and you suggest a fully customizable experience that is unique to each coach-client relationship.
No, I'd go further than that. I mean, if you look at the different models, you have off the peg, which is like sales and marketing, or going into a shop and buying something. You have tailored, which is the equivalent of what you call customizable. And you have bespoke, which is 100% handmade from the very beginning. So there's this slight difference between the two.
Yeah, I see. And by the way, I want to provide a little English to English translation. Off the peg, folks, means off the rack here in the United States. It was funny when I heard you say off the peg. I'm like, I think I know what that means, but I want to wait until he describes it a second time. So yeah, but no, it's okay. I had a very interesting conversation with somebody. We'll have to talk about. We'll definitely not talk about this on air because of what they accidentally said. But I guess there's a saying in the UK that's very respectful, and and that same saying here in the United States is a racial slur. It was kind of very interesting. So I said, by the way, you might want to say this. So I always love when things like that happen. Anyway, back to the important thing. So you take it. And I don't mean to diminish it when I say customize. So you take it down. I think we're actually talking about the same thing. I mean, it's maybe a better way to put it is individualized experience, so that it's a unique experience. Each client-coach relationship becomes a unique experience in the end for the client, and sometimes for the coach. I would think for the coach as well, right?
Absolutely, for both. And this is what you've been striving for, which runs all the way through from where the match is between your true gift and where it'll have greatest impact. This runs through the whole system, process, practice.
Yeah, and it would seem to me that if you started with your gifts and your challenges that you went through, it's not only easier to do a completely individualized, but it's almost the only way you can do a completely individualized program and not pull your hair out. And here's what I mean. People who are hearing us, coaches who are watching this, might be scared and go, how the heck am I going to create an individualized experience for every one of my clients? And it's like, well, if you just went to coaching school, if you only went to coaching school and aren't implementing your life, you're going to find it very tough because you're going to be doing a lot of work. However, if you're using your life and your experiences and your gifts, you're going to find it, I would think anyway, and Dennis, please chime in here, I would think you'd find it much easier and almost effortless because everything's already inside of you. And if you're coaching in abundance, go ahead.
Right, the way that I'd respond to this is, number one, we're a coaching practice who coach coaches. A critical part of the process is for the coachee to experience the program. So they've been through it for themselves. So then they know how to apply it with their clients. So that's, if you like, is the set of relationships. So it's a kind of chain reaction in terms of the coaching practice. they have an experience of someone getting to their true gift and where it's the greatest impact. They learn how to do it with their clients. So it's a bit similar to the kind of psychotherapy stroke supervision model, but it's also different.
Right. So let me ask you this: as we're, we got a couple minutes left in the show today, and as we're winding down, when we're talking about applying the new paradigm and everything else, how does this allow you to attract your ideal client abundantly? Because, and I'm going to just say one real quick thing to follow up, because when I think of attracting abundantly, I figure, okay, I'm going to go out and do what I do best, and I'm going to do right by people, and and the result is I'm going to get my ideal client, and it's going to be easier than most other methods of getting my ideal client.
Okay, so this is where the link with marketing comes in. The marketing piece is a combination of software, virtual organization, whatever that gets the message out there and mass communicates. Whereas the personal piece is when the virtual organization delivers the people face to face with one another. So it is actually a combination. Marketing's still there, but the messaging's completely different. And it's the enrollment process where all the key changes happen. So that's why there's such a strong focus on enrollment.
Epic. And in the end, I think what I'm hearing is this. One of the areas that this all helps to kind of make easier and more seamless and put you in the flow is I'll say two things. One, getting ideal clients to come to you because your ideal message is out there. So the right people are going to resonate with it, so that when the right people resonate with it and they're in front of you and you be your true and authentic self and you coach them from day one, even when it's not a paid relationship, maybe from day one, it's going to make it much more seamless to enroll them into your programs and into your packages and everything. Do I got that right, or did I miss something?
Absolutely. And the other thing is on the marketing side, the infrastructure is all in place. I pay less than $100 a month. I don't need any sophisticated equipment, and don't even run a website. I do have landing pages, but they are easily put together on WordPress or stuff like that. So it is actually very, very cost effective. The main thing is how you're reaching out, how you're connecting, and how you're getting that message out in the right kinds of places to as many people as possible. But because I deal with a very generic topic like facilitating tough and complex decisions and resolving dilemmas, that could apply to a whole load of people in all sorts of different situations.
Yep, exactly. Well, Dennis, it's been epic having you on the show today, folks. We've been talking today on Expert Showcase with Denis Roberts during the first half of the show. If you haven't watched it, you got to go back and watch Dennis's hero's journey to understand why he's the one you need to reach out and talk to when it comes to enrolling clients abundantly, because you understand the challenges he went through, and why he's the success he is today. And then in this segment, we talked about identifying your precise niche, putting the client first, and applying a new paradigm. That was officially the last time I think I'll say the word niche. And for those of you keeping track, I think I hit 5. I don't know. You better be keeping track at home. You settle up when you want to settle up. But Dennis, this has been epic. Before I give kind of an epic rollout and get people over to your your LinkedIn profile and everything else I got to tell the folks as we wrap up, is there any last words you want to leave our audience with today?
Have fun.
Epic. Have fun. Love it. So, folks, I just threw Dennis's LinkedIn profile address up on the screen, uk.linkedin.com/in/DenisRoberts1, and that's a number 1 on the end and only 1 N in his name. And I think, Dennis, I got through with no double N's. So for those of you who took the 0, you got the under. Hey, maybe you made it a dufector? I don't even know. But anyway. So, folks, today's been another epic episode of Expert Showcase. We had an epic guest on in Denis Roberts. He showed us how to enroll clients abundantly. And for coaches, you need to be able to attract and enroll clients abundantly and seamlessly, because if you don't, it's a struggle, it's a stress, it's frustration. Denis has been through it. I've been through it. All the people I've ever known in coaching practice have gone through it at one point or another. It's tough out there to get clients, especially if you're not being yourself. And that's part of enrolling clients abundantly, is being yourself, being the true and authentic you that, being the true and authentic you that will attract your ideal clients to, attract the ideal people to, attract the people to you, and then make it seamless once they get in, because it's much better to have 10 people approaching you, 10 ideal clients approaching you a week and enrolling all 10, than having 3,000 trying to reach you and still only enrolling 10. In the end, you still have 10 clients either way, but you spend less time, less money, less effort, less frustration if you figure out how to enroll clients abundantly. And to do that, reach out to Denis, contact him on his LinkedIn profile. You can find detailed information of his work with a link on to the paper on the new paradigm and an invitation to a gift coaching session. His email address is djr@menta.me.uk. You can contact him directly as well. Once again, reach out to Denis. You need to get a hold of this guy's resources. You need to see what he can do for you. Folks, it's been another epic day. Thank you for your time. Denis, thank you again for joining us. And everyone, until we meet again, make it an epic day.